I couldn't help but smile, a big, wide grin, and it's no surprise. There I was, staring at my beautiful wife, Emma. She's 27, in the prime of her life, and every bit as gorgeous as the day I met her. She stood at a moderate height, with a slim figure, absolutely breathtaking. But you might wonder, why was I grinning while she was in tears? Well, I'll explain. My smile was directly tied to her tears, and I'm more than happy to clarify. It all started about 6 months ago at least. That's when I first noticed things beginning to shift. Emma and I lived in North London, where I worked at a law firm and had just been promoted to partner. Rebecca and Charles were two of the older partners, with Charles nearing retirement and Rebecca having left years earlier. There were 3 other partners, and we were all waiting for Charles to retire so we could modernize the firm. How long it would take to bring it into the 21st century was anyone's guess. Our firm operated in a very traditional way. Emma and I lived a comfortable life. We had a lovely home, 2 new cars, a Jaguar and a Porsche, and a membership at the local country club. Our love life was incredible. No, it was amazing. Even after 7 years of marriage, it was still frequent and fulfilling. Everything seemed perfect, right? Wrong. I didn't realize anything was off until that Thursday night. Daniel, Emma said as we finished the last of our wine, "Do you ever think we need to spice things up a bit?" I was puzzled. Holding up the empty bottle, I joked, "I thought you liked this Côte de Nuits as much as I did. It was a wine we both loved." But I had completely missed the point. "I'm not talking about the wine, you fool," she laughed, catching me off guard. I didn't see that coming. "What's wrong with our relationship?" I asked, still processing my surprise. She hesitated, saying, "Oh, I don't know, Daniel," but stopped short of elaborating further. After dropping that bombshell, she clammed up for the rest of the night, leaving me to wonder what kind of excitement she wanted in our love life. 2 nights later, she brought it up again, this time while we were in bed. "You know how hard it is to concentrate in that situation. Have you ever thought about being with another woman?" she asked. "Yes," I replied, which was true, but my response was brief for a reason. "Anyone in particular?" she pressed. I thought to myself, come on, woman, let's get on with it, but that's not what I said aloud. "Your friend Gail, Rob's wife," I joked. I could have mentioned more names, but I didn't mean it. Not really, or maybe I did. We were just playing around, or so I thought. "What if you could?" she continued. "Not Halle Berry. Gail's a bit hard to figure out, but what if you had the chance?" I was jolted back to reality. "Wait, you mean Rob's wife?" I asked, shocked. The thought alone stunned me. If you had seen Rob's wife, you'd understand. She was a walking temptation with long, shapely legs she wasn't shy about flaunting, always in skirts that left little to the imagination. Things were getting very interesting. "No," silly Emma giggled, bursting my bubble. "I don't mean anyone specific, just hypothetically." Holy cow, what was my sweet, innocent wife suggesting? Too bad about Rob's wife, though. "Anyone in mind?" I asked, trying to play it cool while shaking thoughts of Rob's wife out of my head. "Not yet," she said, "but maybe a couple we could swap with, or something." I was so lost in my fantasies that it took a moment for her words to sink in. It felt surreal, more than surreal, actually. We didn't mention it again that night, even as we made love until dawn. Honestly, I don't think we talked about anything after that. 3 nights later, as we sat watching TV, EastEnders was on. She enjoyed it, but I was distracted. I could hardly focus on the episode. "Have you thought about it?" she asked. "I think he'll end up with the girl," I replied, struggling to follow the plot. "No." "Silly," she laughed again. "Not the show. I mean about us with another couple." "Oh." That I said, caught off guard by the sudden shift in conversation. "So you've been thinking about it, Daniel? Damn. How did I walk into that one?" "Well, if you're open to it," she said more seriously, "I might consider it. But I'm not sure yet." "Wait a minute. Who's steering this conversation?" I asked, trying to regain control. "Where are these ideas coming from, Emma?" "It wasn't me who started it," she replied. "I'm not saying I'm against it, but I don't know." At that moment, I regretted having that extra bottle of wine earlier. Where was this going? And did I even want to find out? "One of my clients at work enjoys it," she said casually. My heart skipped a beat. Was my wife really saying this? My mind raced. But being the idiot I am, I asked, "Who's the damn it? What was I thinking?" I didn't mean to ask about the client's wife, but it just slipped out. Emma seemed to know exactly what I was thinking. "I think his wife is attractive," she said, as if it were no big deal. But she wasn't the one on my mind, or was she? My thoughts raced. "No." "Emma," I said firmly after some reflection, "dream about it if you want. But I don't think we should go down that path." "That's all I was doing, darling," she replied sweetly. But my gut told me she had more up her sleeve. Things got even more complicated from there. I should mention that while I worked as a solicitor, Emma was a barrister. She spent her days in court, persuading people to see things her way. Her sharp, analytical mind made her brilliant at her job, and often she was a step ahead of me in our debates. Emma wasn't great at long-term planning or strategy. Without my help, we wouldn't even be able to plan a simple summer vacation. She lived entirely in the present, and had always been that way. When we first met nearly 9 years ago, Emma had been a bit of a wild child, with a reputation to match. Not that she was indiscriminate, but when she set her sights on a guy, he was pretty much done for. Whether he intended it or not, he would end up in her bed. I can vouch for this, and I'll say it wasn't exactly a bad situation to be in. Still, I never participated in any of the group activities Emma was known for being involved in. And that was one part of her past I didn't dwell on. I knew she had been a part of those experiences, but I never wanted to know how many times or with whom. Anyway, it all happened before we met. Sometimes I wondered if it was pure chance that I became her steady boyfriend after she finished university. That's when she seemed to change. Maybe she matured, or perhaps she realized that her chosen career wouldn't tolerate impulsive behavior like that. Whatever the case, I was the one who benefited. She settled down and became the perfect loyal wife, never giving me a reason to doubt her faithfulness. That doesn't mean the thought never crossed my mind, though. Fast forward 2 weeks and Emma and I were sitting in a fancy downtown bar, waiting for Tyler Romano and his wife to arrive. Yes, she had convinced me to at least meet with this couple to talk about it. Tyler, it seemed, ran a small business making Christmas cards. It wasn't a huge operation, but it must have brought in a decent income. As for his wife, I knew next to nothing about her, and Emma hadn't shared much either. Let's be clear, we weren't going there to swap that night, no way. We were just meeting for drinks, maybe discuss the idea, ask a few questions, nothing more. Still, I couldn't shake the nervousness and curiosity swirling in my head. I dated quite a bit before meeting Emma, though not as much as she had, but the idea of something new didn't scare me. My emotions were all over the place, and when it came to Emma, I couldn't help but wonder, can people really change? Was this her way of telling me she missed her old ways but didn't want to cheat? And if that was the case, what was I supposed to do about it? My mind raced, feeling trapped no matter which way I turned. "They're here," Emma exclaimed, jumping up to kiss the cheek of a handsome man who had just walked in. We greeted each other, Emma, Daniel, Tyler, and Hannah. Good Lord, Hannah. Tyler looked to be about 30, close to my age, but Hannah, she couldn't have been older than her early 20s. She was absolutely stunning, with a face that would make anyone dream. Why on earth would Tyler want to swap a woman who looked like her? The night went smoothly, although I fumbled over my words when trying to talk to Hannah. I did learn that Tyler was a Spurs fan, and as an Arsenal supporter, that didn't exactly warm me to him. Still, we left on good terms, agreeing to meet again soon. "You liked her, didn't you?" Emma asked me later. I thought it was a silly question. Not that I hadn't noticed the way she and Tyler had connected. The next few days were rough. Emma kept nudging, hinting, and offering suggestions until we had to confront the issue. Were we going to do this or not? "No," I said firmly, despite finding Hannah incredibly tempting. "Fine," Emma responded, "let's drop it," but she didn't. And to be honest, I couldn't stop thinking about it either. The following Tuesday, we found ourselves back at the same bar, waiting for Tyler and Hannah to arrive. Nothing was set in stone, but the possibility hung in the air. Uncertain but present. We had agreed to chat, ask questions, and leave it at that. But deep down, I knew I was drawn to the idea. When I saw Hannah again, I felt an undeniable pull toward her. She had long, dark, shiny hair, big brown eyes that you could get lost in, and a cute little upturned nose. Standing about 5 with a stunning, slightly mixed Asian look, she could have been a magazine model. Her short blue mini dress accentuated her tanned legs, which seemed to go on forever. Okay, I admit it, I have a thing for long, slim legs. The first time we met, I hadn't really paid attention to Tyler, but this time, I noticed how appealing he might be to a woman like Emma. He was taller than me, had broader shoulders, and some women would probably find him more attractive. Jerk, if this guy thought he was going to get with my wife, he had another thing coming. We ordered a second drink, then a third, and I started to relax, chatting more easily with the enchanting Hannah. I heard Emma laugh and glanced at her, and Tyler. I was startled to see how close they were sitting and how comfortable they looked together. I considered saying something, but they weren't doing anything I wouldn't tolerate with any other friend, so I let it go. Not long after, as Hannah was telling a story about her school days, she casually placed her hand on my leg. It all seemed innocent enough, except for the fact that her hand was resting more than halfway up my thigh. Of course I liked it, who wouldn't? But the pounding in my chest and the sudden dryness in my throat warned me to be careful. I glanced over at the others to check if Emma had noticed. I hesitated to ask Hannah to move her hand, not wanting to stir things up with the others. I didn't need to, though, because when I looked back, I was stunned by what I saw. They were even closer than before, and Tyler's hand was now on my wife, reaching as high up her leg as Hannah's hand was on mine. The only difference was that Emma's short skirt made it all the more obvious. That's when it hit me things were escalating too quickly, and I wasn't prepared for it. "Tyler," I called out, trying to control my growing anger. "I don't like this at all." Both of them turned to me, looking startled, and Hannah quickly moved her hand off my leg. "What's wrong?" Daniel, my wife, asked, her voice still thick with the excitement she'd been feeling from Tyler's touch. "What's wrong?" I echoed, frustrated. "He's touching you right now," Emma grinned, and with an unsettling calmness replied, "So what, Daniel?" "I'm having a good time, for God's sake." "Emma," I shot back, my anger rising. "You can't let him treat you like that." "Why not?" she asked, as if it should be obvious to me why this was no big deal to her. But it wasn't. We hadn't agreed to anything like this. I certainly hadn't. "We're in a public bar. Emma, I said, struggling to keep my voice under control. This isn't the place to be having this argument. She exchanged a quick glance with Tyler before turning back to me, fixing me with a look that seemed to challenge me. You're right, Daniel, she said, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me, thinking she'd finally come to her senses. But that feeling didn't last long. Come on, Tyler, my wife said, smiling warmly at him. Let's go somewhere else. We'll catch up with you in the morning. Then Tyler said, standing up and taking Emma's arm. Hold on a second. I didn't agree to this. I don't want this to happen, I protested, completely unsure of what I even wanted at that moment. Emma gave me a quick kiss on the cheek and left me standing there, utterly dumbfounded. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I had just witnessed. I stood there, mouth agape, in shock. Then Hannah stood up and hugged me. And in that moment, all my resistance crumbled. I should have done something, anything, but I just stood there, frozen. Maybe if I had acted, things would have turned out differently, but maybe they wouldn't have. Either way, I was paralyzed, watching it all unfold without lifting a finger to stop it. I watched as my wife gathered her things, linked arms with Tyler, and prepared to leave. Have a good time, Daniel, she said with a smile as she walked out the door. I'll see you in the morning. I was numb, standing there in silence as the reality of the situation sank in. My wife of 7 years was walking out of the bar, laughing and chatting with Tyler, her arm wrapped around his. God, what had I done wrong? Or was it what I hadn't done? He was taking my wife away, and I did nothing to prevent it. Are you ready to go? Daniel, Hannah's sweet voice asked beside me, as she snuggled up even closer. In a daze, I watched as Emma and Tyler disappeared around the corner. I looked down at Hannah, searching for some kind of direction. I shouldn't have done that. It was a mistake, but I was a fool. And I couldn't resist a woman as beautiful as Hannah. My eyes were drawn to her, and I knew I had lost. I gave her a weak smile, trying to mask my uncertainty, and she beamed back at me, her dark eyes full of promise. She was breathtakingly gorgeous, and to top it off, that jerk Tyler had left me to pay for the drinks. An hour later, we ended up at my place, in bed, and what can I say? My heart raced. I started to wonder who would regret this more in the weeks to come. I had always thought love with Emma was amazing, but Hannah, with all her youth and energy, took it to a whole new level. How could I ever look Emma in the eye again after what I had done, knowing how incredible it had been? And then there was the other side. How could I face her knowing what she had done with Tyler? It bothered me to think about how great her night might have been with that guy, and whether or not things could ever return to normal between us. But, to be fair, none of that crossed my mind in the heat of the moment. Hannah left at 9:00 in the morning, giving me a peck on the cheek and saying she hoped we could do this again soon. Emma returned at 9:30, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect if they'd planned it. Looking back, I don't know why I didn't find that suspicious at the time. When Emma came in, I felt a mixture of emotions: anger at how she had manipulated me, shame for having gone along with it, and confusion over how much I had actually enjoyed the whole thing. How was your night? Emma asked. Fine, I replied. And yours? Fine, she answered, smiling. Before long, we were both grinning and laughing, but deep down, I knew everything had changed. Our life would never be the same again. I tried to hide my excitement when Emma told me she had tentatively arranged for us to see the couple again the following week. As the day approached, she informed me that she had made plans to have dinner with Tyler, and they would meet at the restaurant. I, on the other hand, was supposed to meet Hannah at the bar where we first met. That arrangement suited me just fine. I was looking forward to spending more time with the stunning Hannah, and I wasn't too bothered by not having to hang out with the man who was now sleeping with my wife. We'll stay at our place tonight, Daniel, and you can head over to their house this time, Emma suggested. It seemed reasonable, so I agreed. But as she prepared for her date, doubts crept in. Do you think Tyler will like this outfit, or should I not bother? She asked. That was not a question I wanted to answer, considering the situation. But since I had committed to this arrangement, I had no choice but to accept it. My thoughts drifted to Hannah, imagining her getting ready and wondering what she might be wearing. That was definitely an interesting thought. You look fine, dear, I replied, struggling to contain my emotions. I just had to deal with it, though I never liked the white dresses anyway. A lump formed in my throat as Emma gave me a quick kiss on the lips before leaving. What on earth were we doing? With a sigh, I closed the door behind her and headed out for my own date with the stunning Hannah. Life could be tough, but I guess it could be worse. Half an hour later, I found myself sitting at the bar, nursing a beer and waiting for my date. I couldn't wait for Hannah to walk in, imagining every guy in the room noticing her and envying me. I wondered what kind of revealing outfit she'd show up in tonight and looked forward to seeing it come off later. I had to admit, dating another beautiful woman after 7 years of marriage felt exciting. The agreed meeting time came and went, and as another 30 minutes passed, I began to grow anxious. My phone rang and I relaxed a little, assuming Hannah was calling to say she was running late. But no, it was Emma, honey. I've got bad news. Hannah came home from work feeling sick, so she won't be able to make it tonight, she said. Oh, I replied, trying to hide my disappointment. Where are you? I asked. I'm with Tyler, she said. He left before Hannah got home. and she called him to let me know she wasn't coming. I swore under my breath. So, what's your plan, Emma? Are you coming home? A tense silence fell on the other end, so quiet I could hear my heart beating. What's your plan? I repeated. Well, Daniel, I'd like to continue my date with Tyler. Is that okay with you, sweetie? She asked. It wasn't okay at all. A swap is a swap, but this felt completely unfair, and I told her as much. Come on, Daniel, don't be upset. I know it's disappointing, but Tyler just treated me to dinner, and we're having a really nice time. Well, I'm not. I snapped back. I never liked this idea in the first place, and now I'm completely done. Oh, come on, Daniel, she urged. It's just one night. No, Emma, I cut her off. We need to put an end to this now. Listen, Daniel, what if I don't stay the whole night? What if I just spend the evening with him? I can't just get up and leave in the middle of dinner, she argued. I hadn't thought about that, and she made a good point. At the very least, she should finish the meal. Fine, I grumbled, still not happy about it. But be home by 11, come on. Daniel, I'm thinking more like 2 or 3 in the morning, she countered. No way, Emma, midnight at the latest, I insisted. Let's compromise and say 12:30, she suggested. What difference did it make? Fine, be back by 12:30, I muttered, giving in. No, Daniel, she corrected me. I said after 12:30. Remember, we're staying at our place this time. The nerve of her. Then go to his damn house, I yelled into the phone. Fine, I'll be back by 12:30, she relented. Damn her, she had manipulated me again, just like she always did. It was no wonder she was so successful in court. Fine, go to his damn house, I spat out, refusing to hang around in a bar all night, waiting for my own home to be safe. See you around 2. Then. Honey, she said before hanging up. The nerve. I could practically see her smirking as she sat there. I could have called her back, but there was no point. She'd be sleeping with another man tonight, while I would be going home alone. It wasn't right. What bothered me more? That my wife would be sharing a bed with someone else, or that I wouldn't be with Hannah in return. I didn't know the answer to that. Perhaps the most painful part was that Emma had chosen Tyler over me for the night. That hurt and left me feeling hollow inside. I have no idea when she came home, because I was fast asleep by then. It wasn't at the time she said she would be back, but when I woke up, she was lying next to me in bed. When did you get home last night? I asked as she woke up. Don't ask, she mumbled. I'm exhausted, and why wouldn't she be? I knew better than to press for more details, and she chuckled, as if the whole thing was funny, but I wasn't laughing. I was angry at myself for going along with this partner-swapping idea. Sure, I'd had a great time with Hannah, and it felt like a fantasy come true, but was it worth risking my marriage? Was it worth jeopardizing my special bond with Emma? No, it wasn't. Not at all. This had to end, and it had to end now. I got dressed and left while Emma drifted back to sleep. I didn't see her again until early afternoon when she came downstairs full of energy, like a teenager. What a beautiful day, she sang, running over to me, hugging me tightly, and planting a big kiss on my lips. She seemed so happy, so I figured now was as good a time as any to bring up ending this whole adventure, but she beat me to it. I've set up another date with Tyler for next Tuesday, she announced. Oh, was all I could manage, my anger rising. Hannah's still not feeling well, but maybe next time, she added. No, I said firmly. What do you mean no? Emma asked, surprised. No means no, Emma, I repeated. I'm not doing this anymore, but you agreed to it. Daniel, she almost spat. You were the one who came up with the idea. In the first place, I took a few deep breaths, not wanting to say something I'd regret. You're not going out with that Tyler guy again, I said, my voice low but firm. And how are you going to stop me? She asked, her anger rising to meet mine. That was a good question. How could I stop her, unless I locked her up or followed her every move? I can't stop you, but if you do, don't expect me to be here when you come back, I said, thinking my response was fair. But the look Emma gave me was as if I had just declared war on France. You don't mean that, she challenged. Try me, I shot back. We stood there, staring each other down for a few tense moments until she realized she might have pushed too far. She softened her stance, trying to calm me down. Okay, I get it. I see where you're coming from, she said, acknowledging that it wasn't fair to me. Then she shrugged and went off to fix herself a drink. But the real issue remained she missed the point. She seemed to only grasp that it wasn't fair if she was out having fun while I wasn't. Not that I was unhappy with this whole new setup in our marriage. I may have won this round, but the bigger battle was still looming. No, not with France. This was much more important. We talked for the rest of the day, but that night, when we were in bed, she snuggled up close and pressed herself against me in a seductive way. Are you feeling neglected, honey? She asked, her voice soft. What are you talking about? I replied. You know, Daniel, she continued, do you feel like you're not getting enough love just because I'm seeing someone else? What do you think, Emma? I shot back. You don't have to worry, she reassured me. I'll always love you, and you're still my favorite in bed. Is that why we haven't been together since the first time you went off with Tyler? I asked bluntly. She gasped. Oh my gosh, Daniel, I'm so sorry. And with that, she put in extra effort to make up for it. As we lay there afterward, I found myself comparing Emma to Hannah. Who did I really prefer? Emma sighed with satisfaction. thanked me for a great night, and quickly fell asleep. But I stayed awake, lost in thought. For the first time in our marriage, I wondered if I had just experienced a pity love session. It wasn't bad, but it didn't feel like what marriage should be. I started questioning whether our relationship could survive this. A few days later, Emma casually mentioned, "Hannah's feeling better now." Daniel, I thought she'd elaborate, but she didn't. She just went about her business, and I did the same. Nothing happened, but I knew she wouldn't leave it at that. "What if I planned something for next Tuesday?" she asked, trying to keep her voice casual. Like what I responded, pretending not to know. Of course, she saw through my act. "You can have our house again if you want," she added, as if that made a difference. "Is this really what you want, Emma?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "It's what we both want, isn't it, honey?" she shot back. "We had fun last time. So why not?" I thought about telling her the truth that I hadn't had any fun last time at all. In fact, I had been alone while she was out enjoying herself, but what was the point? "How about Wednesday instead of Tuesday?" I suggested, just to be difficult. "No," she said firmly. "It has to be Tuesday." Something about that was strange, but I decided not to argue. Something felt off, though I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Why was Emma so eager for an affair after 7 seemingly happy years together? Why risk our marriage, knowing I wasn't fully on board? And why was it always on Tuesdays? How did Tyler, of all people, end up with someone as young and beautiful as Hannah, and why would he even want to swap? Determined to figure out what was going on, I used my contacts to track down Tyler Romano's address, discovering it was only a few miles away. The next afternoon, I drove over, parking my Jaguar a few houses down from his. It was an expensive standalone home, sitting on a large plot of land he clearly had money to burn. I waited for almost an hour, watching as no one came or went, and started to feel foolish for being there. Then the front door opened and 2 kids, around 8 or 9 years old, came tumbling out. They played in the yard for a while before one of them shouted, "See you tomorrow," and ran off down the street, while the other headed back inside. This wasn't what I expected. How could someone as young as Hannah have a child that age? It didn't add up. As I mulled over this, a Ford Focus pulled up, and a woman in a nurse's uniform got out. She walked straight to the house and went inside. What was going on here? I stayed a bit longer, but nothing else happened, so I drove back to work, feeling even more confused. There had to be an explanation. Why would a nurse be there, and where did the child come from? The questions gnawed at me, and I couldn't focus on my work, pacing around the office and annoying everyone. I felt ridiculous, but couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I finally forced myself back to my desk and tried to focus on a divorce case I was handling. It involved a couple splitting up, both wanting the separation but fighting over custody. And then it hit me, of course. The boy must be Tyler's son from a previous marriage. That made sense. Tyler must have gotten divorced and remarried Hannah, with his son living with him part-time. The boy didn't need to be there full-time, maybe he was just visiting. But who was the nurse? That took me another hour to figure out. Hannah had been sick, hadn't she? Maybe the nurse was there to treat her. It was a stretch, but it was the best explanation I could come up with. Perhaps I was overthinking everything, but Emma's odd behavior had me on edge. Even though it all seemed to make sense, something inside me whispered that things weren't as they seemed. I decided to take one final step before letting it go. I called Steve White, a private investigator our firm often hired, and asked him to do a basic background check for me. No one would think twice about it. Steve assured me he'd have the information by the next day. I managed to focus on my work a bit more after that. True to his word, Steve emailed me the results the following morning. It was simple. The public records showed that Tyler Romano, Tommy Romano, and Emma Romano were the only residents at that address. No Hannah. Sick or not, the nurse wasn't there to take care of her. The nurse was Tyler's wife. As Tuesday evening approached, my thoughts spiraled, unable to form a clear conclusion. I considered confronting Emma multiple times, but hesitated. What if there was a logical explanation that made me look like a fool for investigating her? Our trust was already shaky, and if she found out I'd been snooping, it might be the last straw. I resolved to go ahead with the evening as planned, hoping to get answers from Hannah before confronting Emma. It seemed like the only way forward. I assumed Hannah would show up, though with everything going on, it didn't seem certain. "Good to see you again," I heard, and when I looked up there was Hannah, hand on her hip, even more gorgeous than I remembered. I glanced around the bar, noticing the envious stares from the other men. For a brief moment, I felt pretty good. She was wearing high-heeled sandals and tight black leggings, paired with a small flared skirt. Her legs looked incredible, and I had a strong urge to touch them. She was stunning, and her smile melted my heart. Her eyes captivated me, or maybe it was her legs. No, it was her smile. Actually, it was everything about her. She felt like a dream come true. She seemed a little surprised when I suggested we stay for a quick bite, but she agreed right away, and we made our way to the table I had reserved. I had some questions, and I wanted answers before the night went any further. "Who are you, really?" I asked once we sat down. "Hannah," she laughed. "You can't have forgotten me already after our last night together." "Yes, Hannah," I pressed on. "I know your name, but you're not Tyler Romano's wife, are you?" Her smile vanished, and the confidence drained from her face. She swallowed hard, clearly not expecting that. "What do you mean?" Daniel was all she managed to say, her voice weak. "Come on, Hannah, if that's your real name," I continued. "Why is Tyler trading you for my wife when you aren't even his wife?" I had her cornered. She looked around, as if searching for an escape, but there was none. After a pause, she sighed. "I guess I should tell you the truth. That would be a good idea," I replied, waiting for her to spill. Was she his girlfriend, sister-in-law, or perhaps a neighbor? I had no idea. "Listen, Daniel," she began, "you're a nice guy, and I'm sorry if I misled you." I stayed silent, letting her continue while she took a deep breath. "They paid me," she confessed. "They paid you," I nearly shouted. "They paid you to date me, to sleep with me." "What kind of person does that? The kind who gets paid to sleep with men?" "She doesn't know," she answered quietly, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm really sorry." Her words caught me off guard, and before I could think, I yelled, "You're a hooker." "Please keep your voice down," Hannah begged, looking around nervously. "I'd prefer the term escort, but yes, it's the same thing." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Tyler had hired a prostitute to pretend to be his wife so he could sleep with mine. How will Emma react when she finds out what he did? I asked, though it was a stupid question. I still couldn't think straight. "I think she already knows," Daniel, Hannah said hesitantly. "She called me to arrange the meetings. There had to be some mistake, right?" But deep down, I knew there wasn't. "Well, I hope she didn't pay for it," I muttered, at a loss for words. "No," Daniel, Hannah responded, trying to comfort me. "The guys paid both times." I felt so crushed that I almost missed her slip up. When I looked up, she had her hand over her mouth, realizing she had let something else slip. "Guys," I asked. "Does that mean more than one?" She nodded silently. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself before doing something I'd regret. I wasn't about to hit her, but I needed to clear my head. "Tell me more," I urged, waiting for her to explain. "There are 3 of them," Hannah continued. "Tyler, Robert, and Terry. Terry was a client of mine before, and that's how they knew me." I sat there in silence, shaking my head. "I'm sorry," Hannah said again, "but it didn't help. I liked our first meeting." "Daniel," she went on, "you're a good guy, and it wasn't like my usual dates. You actually cared about my experience too. But when they asked me to do it again the following Tuesday, I said no because I didn't want to cheat on you after meeting you. So that's why she didn't show up for our second date." That explained why I waited all night, my stomach in knots, imagining someone else with my wife. But then the truth hit me like ice water. Emma wasn't seeing one other guy, she was seeing 3. The realization made me feel sick. That smile on her face, well, they always do that, don't they? I buried my head in my hands, trying not to cry. I couldn't stop my arms from shaking, my emotions in turmoil. "I'm sorry," Hannah whispered, gently rubbing the back of my head. I should have pushed her away, but her touch soothed me, calming me down a little. "What brought you here this time?" I asked, trying to block the awful thoughts from my mind. "They offered me more money," Daniel, Hannah replied. "Plus, I liked the idea of seeing you again. At least I hadn't been rejected by a prostitute, though that did little to make me feel better." We talked for a while longer, with Hannah sharing everything she knew. I sat there, taking it all in, barely able to believe what I was hearing. Tears welled up in my eyes more than once, and I didn't pull away when she took my hand and squeezed it. Emma had gone back to her old ways, running the whole show while I was left to deal with it. Had I ever really understood my wife? Could people change? She had fooled me, and now I had to figure out how to figure out. I wasn't sure how yet, but I would. As far as I was concerned, my marriage was over, but there was nothing I could do about it right then. So I looked at Hannah. My God, she was stunning. "Why not?" I thought. "Want to come to my place?" I asked. "I'd love to, Daniel," she said with a smile, and we did. It helped a lot. Emma came back the next morning. She looked tired but happy. Now I knew why. I didn't just want a divorce or an easy exit, I wanted revenge, and I wanted it on all 4 of them. When Emma tried to kiss me, I turned my cheek just enough to unsettle her, but not enough to raise alarms. She'd have plenty of time to worry later. She stared at me, waiting for me to say something, maybe to share how much fun I had or to ask about her night. But I kept quiet, letting her figure out my thoughts on her own. A plan started forming in my head. To make it work, I needed to find out where they were meeting. It wasn't at Tyler's house, since his wife wouldn't allow that, so it had to be somewhere else. And it always happened on Tuesdays, likely because they had some excuse for that night, maybe bowling or drinking. The reason didn't matter much. What I needed was someone to help me, someone who knew them well and could get the information I required. Who better than Hannah? After all, we'd had a great time both nights, and she seemed to feel the same. I'd learned a lot about her and her life. She'd only been an escort for 3 months. How many men she had seen I didn't know, and I didn't ask. Hannah had been studying fashion design at university when she ran into serious financial trouble. It wasn't a new story, but with her undeniable beauty, the first bar where she applied for work eagerly hired her. That eventually led to a job at a nightclub, where she discovered that showing more skin led to bigger tips. She chuckled as she told me how much fun she had teasing the men who tried to sneak glances down her revealing tops. One thing led to another, and eventually someone convinced her to try pole dancing. She was a natural at it from the start, and I could easily see why. Soon, customers began asking her out on dates, and she quickly realized just how much money she could make in a single night. Although she tried to justify her choices, she ended up quitting school. By the time we met, she regretted dropping out. So, there we were, just the two of us, saying goodbye when Hannah asked when we could meet again. The subject of money never came up, which made me wonder if I was jumping from one bad situation into something even worse. Hannah offered to help, and within a few days I found out that Emma and her 3 lovers met every Tuesday night at the Paramore Hotel, on the other side of town. At least they weren't being cheap. The Paramore was one of the most expensive hotels around. Given how much they paid Hannah, I should have expected as much. I also knew the exact room they always used, a corner room on the 2nd floor, conveniently located next to the fire escape. Maybe they thought I'd storm in and confront them, so they planned a quick exit. That wasn't my plan, but they were still in for a surprise. I just had to wait for Tuesday. I didn't need Hannah's help for what I had in mind that night. I simply told Emma I'd be out of town for business. "What will you do while I'm away, sweetheart?" I asked innocently. "Oh, I'll just stay home," she replied. "Or maybe catch a movie with a coworker." "Yeah, right." The look in her eyes told a different story. At 8:30 sharp, I was sitting in the lobby of the Paramore Hotel, newspaper in hand, ready to use as cover if needed. 2 beers later, I saw her strut toward the grand staircase. She wore high heels, a tight, trendy skirt, and an expensive blouse that revealed more than it covered. She looked stunning, and my throat tightened as I thought about her lies, her infidelity, and how long she had been deceiving me. If things went as planned tonight, we wouldn't sleep together again, and for a moment, I regretted how little intimacy we'd had lately. "Emma," a voice called out, and she turned with a bright smile toward a man I didn't recognize. "That must be Robert or Terry," I figured. "Hi, Terry," she shouted back, confirming my suspicion. "Where are Robert and Tyler?" she asked as he approached. "They've already gone ahead," Terry responded, pulling her in for a tight embrace. Emma wrapped her arms around his neck, bringing him close for a long, passionate kiss. So, this was just love, huh? If that was love, I'd hate to see what real passion looked like. If my heart had anything left to break, it would have shattered right then. He let her go, and together they ascended the stairs. My eyes, along with those of most other men in the lobby, followed them as she laughed at whatever he was saying. I imagine many of the guys watching felt a twinge of envy, knowing what was in store for those two. I, on the other hand, felt completely empty inside. 10 minutes later, I noticed something most others missed. 3 large men stood up and headed toward the reception desk. A woman from another direction, who looked like she was in charge, joined them. I peered over my newspaper and saw the woman pull something out from her jacket, showing it to the receptionist, who looked startled. After a few quiet words, the young receptionist disappeared into a room behind the counter, returning with an older man who looked like the manager. A brief conversation followed, and the manager handed over a key, nodding to the woman. This scene played out in plain sight, but most hotel guests didn't even notice. It wasn't until 2 uniformed police officers walked in and took up positions at the entrance that a few people began to look around. Their curiosity piqued. Little did they know how much their interest was about to soar. Even I hadn't anticipated what was coming. The 4 plainclothes detectives casually strolled toward the staircase, trying to blend in before suddenly bolting up the stairs. They disappeared from sight, and I sat there, waiting, wondering if this plan would work out, or if I had pushed too far and could get myself into serious trouble. Then came the silence, followed by chaos. The police had received a tip about a recurring drug-fueled party at the hotel, complete with prostitution. When they heard a few key names, particularly one they didn't like, it grabbed their full attention. I had no idea who tipped them off, but as a lawyer with connections in some shady circles, I had known what was going to happen. I relished the idea of watching my cheating wife being led out of the hotel in handcuffs. While I doubted any charges would stick, the humiliation was the payback I craved. I wanted her to face the consequences of her betrayal. Of course, things didn't go exactly as I'd imagined. They never do. But what did happen exceeded all my expectations. Neither I nor Hannah had known that the group had rented not 1 room, but 2. Maybe they used the second one to rest between their sessions, or perhaps it was to keep the noise down. I knew how loud Emma could get during intimate moments after all. When the police burst in, they caught the 4 off guard. 2 of the men panicked. One of them was quickly subdued, but Emma, bless her heart, managed to slip into the adjoining room before they could catch her. She fled down the hallway, escaping through the fire exit. It wasn't until she was halfway across the parking lot that she realized she had forgotten something rather important: her clothes. The entire hotel lobby turned to watch as a stunning blonde raced past the large windows, barefoot and completely naked, with 2 uniformed officers chasing after her. Emma came to a halt once she realized her situation. I couldn't help but smirk as I watched her get escorted back into the hotel, handcuffed and completely exposed. The officers made no effort to cover her up, and she hung her head in shame. unable to hide her naked body from the onlookers. Cameras flashed as people captured the unbelievable sight, thanks to the genius who decided to put cameras on cell phones. Emma stumbled past me, less than 10 feet away, so distraught that she didn't even see me as she sobbed. They forced her back up the stairs against her will. That was my cue to leave. Never in my wildest dreams did I expect things to turn out this perfectly. In the end, Emma wasn't charged, but Terry had a small amount of illegal drugs on him, resulting in a suspended sentence. He avoided jail, but considering he had political ambitions and hoped to become a local MP, this incident completely ruined his career and probably his marriage too. Tyler's wife divorced him and took most of his money. He turned out to be the least significant member of the group. It seemed the others used him to manipulate me. But Robert, he was the real mastermind behind everything. It came to light that Robert and Emma had been secretly involved for months before he introduced her to his two friends. He devised the whole plan to trick me into allowing Emma to be with him. You're probably wondering what happened to Robert, aren't you? Robert, also known as Circuit Judge Robert St. John, didn't escape unscathed. A lot of people in the hotel must have sent the pictures they snapped to the newspapers, though I didn't stick around to see it myself. Images of him being led away in handcuffs, grumbling with his hands bound behind his back, ended up splashed across the front pages of practically every tabloid in the country. To make matters worse, my wonderful wife was working with a barrister on a case overseen by a judge named Miles Worth, which only fueled the media frenzy. The scandal dominated the news for days. Politicians raised questions in Parliament, and even the Prime Minister got involved, demanding that Robert resign during a TV appearance. His career was over. Even though he hadn't technically broken any laws, he would never find work in the legal world again. I don't know what happened to him after that. He seemed to disappear from public view. Poor guy. Not in my opinion. That's pretty much the whole story. Oh wait, I almost forgot about my dear wife, didn't I? I called her the day after everything went down. Hey honey, I said. Hi Daniel, Emma replied, her voice tinged with sadness, though I pretended not to notice. Where are you now? I'm still in Paris, sweetheart, I lied, while sitting at a bar just a few miles from our home. I'm sorry, but I'll need to stay here for a few more days. Can't you come home right away, dear? She asked, almost pleading. But I told her it wasn't possible, that she'd have to wait a bit longer. Have you seen the newspapers, dear? She asked, her voice shaky. No, I haven't. They don't have any English papers where I am. I lied again. Why do you ask? Oh, nothing, she replied. What about TV? I've been too busy to watch, I teased. Has anything interesting happened at home? No, Daniel, nothing special. Well, that is, well, she faltered. Can't you please come home? We need to talk as soon as I finish up here, sweetheart, I reassured her. Please, Daniel, don't forget that I love you. Whatever you hear, remember you're the only one I love. Her words took me by surprise, though I acted like I didn't notice her crying. Still, her comment made me pause. If you love me that much, honey, you won't be running off with that jerk Tyler while I'm away, right? I heard her gasp on the other end of the line. I wanted to talk to you before I left, honey, I continued. I'm unhappy with the situation you've put us in, and I think we should end this before it destroys our marriage. Okay, she choked out. If that's what you want, Emma, I never told you, but I've been so worried you'd want to keep this going. I couldn't handle that. It would ruin our marriage. Oh, Daniel, she sobbed over the phone. This time, I didn't ignore her crying. Love you, Emma, I finished with a lie. I'll see you when I get back in a few days. She continued to weep, but I brushed it off. After our call, I sat there for a while, thinking over what had just happened. Then I picked up my beer and took a long sip. My eyes landed on the newspaper I'd been reading before I called her. On the front page was a clear picture of Emma, her tear-streaked face on full display as police led her through the hotel lobby. To keep things somewhat decent, they had placed a small star over where her legs met, but everything else was visible. The photos were bound to be published anyway, but when the tabloids got their hands on a story involving a young, attractive lawyer caught with a high-ranking judge, it was front-page news. As I mentioned, the story ran for days, and images of my wife were everywhere. Once one outlet dared to remove the small star, the others followed suit, publishing the full set of photos again. Someone even managed to capture a picture of her sprinting across the parking lot. The internet went wild with it. I heard rumors that Playboy invited her to pose for them, but I couldn't verify that, since we never spoke casually again after that. She lost her job, as expected, and ended up working as a legal assistant at some obscure law firm up north. I handled our divorce myself, and I watched her cry in court as the judge, not Robert, of course, rebuked her. The decision didn't go in her favor. That's the end of my story. I hope you enjoyed it. But I've got to run now. I have a hot date with a beautiful young woman who's about to finish her fashion design degree at university. People say she has a bright future ahead of her, and she left her old job behind long ago. Who knows if Hannah and I will last in the long term? I kind of hope we do, but then again, I've always been a glutton for punishment, haven't I?